What's up, guys? It's John Bird III here. We're back again for another video, and in today's video, we got the man himself, Greg Hackney. So we're gonna jump in, we're gonna pick Hackney's brain and really get down into the weeds of some things. But before we jump into this video, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell, that way you can be notified whenever a new video drops and hits the channel. So, Hackney, let's go into your two of your three rods, specifically the 7.6 and the 711. Take us into your brain when it came to those two rods when you designed them.
So the big thing for me is, I said this, we talked about this a little earlier. Our group in general, as I say our group is in general, as professional fishermen, have a tendency to go bigger rods than the general public uses, honestly. And the reason for that is, I want a rod that catches the fish that I'm out of position for. Things go wrong. Everybody who fishes knows this, that you just have bad stuff happens when you're fishing. Mm-hmm. There's a reason the big one always gets away. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it is equipment. Sometimes it's typically not on my end so much equipment failure as it will be fisherman failure. It could be a deal where, how many people know this deal? The first time you take your eyes off a buzz bait, you get a bite. Mm-hmm. Like how, it's almost like their timing is impeccable. Well, the same thing happens flipping. You've went 4 or 5 hours without a bite, and you get the bite that you need, and bad things happen. So the reason I always like to really, I've spent my entire career tweaking my tackle. I'm still tweaking it now. Like, I'm never completely satisfied. If I've missed a fish or lost a fish, I try to go back and look at every reason for that. So these two rods were made not so I wouldn't lose as many. I mean, it's pretty simple. And they are big rods. So this is the 711. And the deal with it is, it's a niche rod even for me. The situation I always look at, like when I'm using this rod, is I'm typically always fishing in something, like through cover, could be bushes, could be, but it's something thick, and it's always in a situation where I need a big weight. This is not a rod I'm gonna pick up and pitch a 5/16, even that heavy, or a 3/8 with. This is gonna be a rod where, honestly, the minimum weight, typically, my favorite flipping weight that Strike King makes is a 5/8, and there are situations where I'll flip with that 5/8. That would be the lightest weight I'll ever put on this rod. If it's a jig, it's typically at least a 3/4 or an ounce, and most of the time, it's punching situation, or it can be a deal like where I'm flipping deep grass, deep hydrilla, say 10 to 17 foot, big jig, an ounce, or an ounce and a quarter, where I'm, got a lot of line out, fishing straight up and down in heavy cover, but never plinking. More times than not, I'm gonna use that 7.6. That 7.6 rod for me is a do-all. And what I mean by that is, 3/4 ounce structure jig out deep. It's my favorite rod for that. 16 or 20 pound fluorocarbon casting that. Big worm, anaconda,
Football
casting,
jig.
Football jig. I'll be honest with you, the structure jig to some extent has eliminated me using a football jig. I'm just such a big fan of that DB structure jig. I like that hook. It's got a bigger hook than most football jigs. I can lean on them quite a bit with it. And the other reason I'm using that 7.6 rod, it's my glide bait rod. I mean, if it was a situation where the mat is so bad and I'm throwing 75 yards, I'll put a frog on it. For a niche situation at Gunnersville or Toho, and I'm frog fishing out in a situation where I just need all the rod I can get, it's just kind of a do-all. Of course, I'm flipping and pitching with it. I love to flip with 20 pound fluorocarbon with it. Braid. The difference with it is I won't hardly go over a 3/4 with it.
Really?
And what I find with that deal is, it's a big rod, but if I put that 1.5 ounce weight on it, it overloads it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All of a sudden, it makes it heavy on the end. It's not enough rod to carry that big weight. And then it makes it uncomfortable. And the main thing when you're fishing, you want to be comfortable.
Right.
That keeps you in the zone. You got a better chance of catching that fish if you're not like, oh, this is heavy, or it makes you lose your train of thought. All you need to be thinking about is that next bite. And if you got a rod that's not comfortable to fish with, it will take your mind off of that. So when somebody, like, I know when the normal person picks this rod up, they go, oh my gosh, that's a big rod. And it is a big rod. And it's big for me, it's big for everybody. But the deal is, once I put that big weight out there on the end of it, all of a sudden it's not big anymore.
So I was in Florida and I was flipping with a 7.6 heavy Super Duty, had 1.25 ounces weight on there, but I was within 5 or 10 minutes, my forearm, my wrist was hurting. And so I thought to myself, should I have used a longer rod? Would that have helped? Or was it just the mechanics? Talk to us about
it could
that
be
big
like
weight deal.
Sometimes the big thing about the big weight is it's not so much about how stiff the rod is here, it's how much it is here. Okay, you want the tip to be heavy enough to carry the weight. That's where the weight's being carried at. It doesn't matter if you got a 7-foot rod or a 7.6, as long as you got a rod. Now, with that being said, if you got one of them feather light, it can be a super stiff rod, but one of those super light, and what I mean by light is the weight of the rod, 7-foot one, and you go put that 1.5 ounce weight on the end of it, after about 10 flips, you're going to want to throw it away.
Right.
It's one of those weird situations where I like to pair these rods when I'm braid fishing with the Super Duty reel.
The standard one.
The standard one. And the reason for that is it's a heavier reel, and you're like, why would you want to add weight? It works as a counterbalance. You want this part of the rod to be heavier in your hand. Once you put the weight on the other end of it, it balances out. And it's what makes it comfortable to fish that big weight all day. But a lot of times, it could be like, because that Super Duty rod is a fine rod.
Right.
If we're using the extra heavy, or
I was using the 7.6 heavy. I feel like I should have had the 711.
Yeah, and so that's one of my favorite rods is the 711, and the deal with it is if I'm using 1.5 ounces, I want the heavy. But if I'm going 1 3/4 ounces or 2 ounce, which is common in Florida, which is a niche deal, you want the extra heavy. It's not that I need the extra heavy action to get the hook home. Any other rod you can get the hook home with. The deal is to carry that big weight to make it comfortable, so I will fish in a way to get bites and to catch those bites when I get them. That big weight fishing is honestly, I do enjoy it, but it's not the funnest way to fish as far as, because it's a lot of work. You know what I mean? Because you're dragging. So that's the other thing you got to think of. That limber rod on the end, the tip slide on, every time you pull that big weight through all that grass, that it's bending down and pulling on you, and you're having to pull it out. Again, I like the parabolic action. The rod can be softer down the rod. You just want the tip stiff enough to carry that weight. So whatever rod you pick, I mean, we got great punching rods in all of our lines. If you just pick the one that pairs right to you, and has enough tip to carry whatever weight, whether it's but here's the deal. If you're using one that's got a great tip for 1.5 ounces, that's not going to be the right rod for a 1/2 ounce. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's too stiff, and you'll lose. It's crazy, but you'll lose some feel with it. You want a softer rod with the lighter weight, so you have more feel.
Now, how does your hook set change when you're flipping into a big mat or something like that compared to when you're pitching on a boat dock or something like that?
So typically, probably the biggest two hook sets difference for me is the difference between a fluorocarbon and a braid hook set. So really, when you're punching mats with a big rod and everything happens up close, and a long pitch is, say, 25 foot. So the farthest you'll be away from the boat with your pitch is 25 foot. What you got to understand is, so you got this big old rod, and you got braid with 0 stretch. So if you move that rod 3 or 4 feet, you've moved the hook 3 or 4 feet. So what's going to happen, either you stick the fish and you're fighting it, or you've pulled it completely out of their mouth. And so what I find for me, to catch more of those fish, it's more of a pull than than a slam. Now, with that being said, you can get by with a harder hook set if they're deeper. If I'm out there in grass that's, 10 to 15 foot, flipping grass, it's a much harder hook set, It's still a pool, but it's a much harder pool than it is if I punch through a mat out there and one gets it instantly that's this deep under the mat. I really like and again, it just goes back to mentally staying in the right place. When that fish gets it on that mat like that, especially if it's what I call a sinker, a lot of them, what'll happen, they'll get it and they set for a second and you lift and you're like, oh, one's got it, and they start sinking. I really like that fish to pull me down, and I just pull back against them. And I find that you get a much better hookup. Now the one that burns you on that, and we've all had this, is, and typically in a warmer water situation, or if there's multiple fish under that mat, when you punch through there, one gets it and smokes you. You pretty much got to do whatever you got to do. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're going to swing on that one because he smoked you when he went in. But on those sinkers, like they get it soon as it goes through that mat, some of them will seem like they get it and you're like, I should have seen it. It's like the instant to wait, the bait, they got it. Like they're right there against it. And you drop right on them. In a perfect world, I like for them to sink. I like for them to be pulling down. Because I think what happens, this is just, I don't know this, can't see them, but I think what happens is they feel that tension. They don't know it's connected to you.
Right.
All they know is whatever they caught, they feel some tension, it's moving. So what do most predators do? If a mountain lion catches an animal around the neck and it squirms, he bites harder. That bass is the same way. All of a sudden, whatever he's caught's moving, he crushes it when he eases down. I never worry about that, and I know this from shaking them off. A lot of term experience and practice, you know how you shake them off? You're like, oh, look at that. That one swam all the way around the boat and all around before he finally spit it out. I think the biggest thing that we do as fishermen sometimes, and again, now it's because I think maybe used to when you feel one, when you were using monofilament and the rods we had in the past, yeah, the instant you feel him set the hook, because he's probably had it for 15 seconds.
Right.
Because of our equipment. But our equipment is so good now, dude, the instant he touches it, you know it.
Now,
you know he's got it.
When you're flipping that big weight into that grass, what size braid are you typically using?
So on the big weight, typically flipping even the 5/8 or bigger, 65.
65.
And the reason for that is to protect my line against that weight. That tungsten's hard. And you can get with like 50. Now, not on a jig, 95% of the time it's 50. I don't have to worry about the knot. There's nothing that can happen to it. But that tungsten weight is hard, and there's a chance. I know everybody's seen this. After you fish a while, sometimes you have to retie your, even with braid, because it's fuzzed your braid a little bit. It's hard. It's got hard edges. The other thing that happens too, I think there's a chance when that weight rolls, and all that pressure and things going on, there's a chance you could cut that smaller braid. So typically for me, it's 65. I don't ever use bigger than 65. I mean, I snag alligators with 65. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to catch alligators, that's what I use, because I can cast it good. But I just think 65 is big enough to protect your weight. But like I said, on a jig, I like 50. I think I get a better rate of fall. 50-pound braids, about like 10-pound fluorocarbon, about the same size. I just feel like it gets me a lot more bites.
Have you noticed this? It's like a trend going on with guys going to like just general flipping, no braid, fluorocarbon, smaller baits, like 3/0 size flipping hooks, lighter weights, to I guess generate more bites. Do you tend to do that, or
so? Case in point, I just fished here recently at Logan Martin in the MPFL event, and an Ocho with a 3/16. That was the juice.
Really?
Like on spots and largemouth pitching docks. Like that, like certain times of the year, that seems to make that late summer period on, like I get away from those big, I could go around with a traditional, like say, like some of those docks I catch some of those fish out of 7-8 feet of water. You could have used a 1/2 ounce weight, but you just wouldn't get any bites. That slow, I just think those, when it gets this time of the year, before we get a weather change, that what I call just that blah period, that July to September, I just think they've seen so much, and you just that finesse flipping. Like I downsized to 16 fluorocarbon, 3/16 ounce weight, and an Ocho and a 3/0 flipping hook.
With your 7.6? What rod were you using with that?
I actually was using my 7.3 frog rod.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a sneaky little flipping rod too.
Yeah, it is. It's smaller. Yeah. I plink a finesse jig on it too. And yeah, when I'm using like 12 to 16 pound fluorocarbon, I like that smaller rod.
Nice.
Yeah.
So somebody who's getting into flipping, they feel like there's just so much stuff out there clogging their brain, big rod, big line. What is the ideal setup for somebody who's trying to get into flipping?
The main thing is get something you're comfortable with.
Okay.
Flipping a big weight, you're not going to be comfortable with it at the beginning. No one is. I wasn't either. Like it took me a while. Like even I grew up in a part of the world where flipping, there were certain times a year it dominated, but they were flipping 3/8, and a half-ounce jig was a big one. First major tournament I won at home, I say major, it was an invitational deal where everybody in our area got invited to fish it. It was the Lester Irons Invitational. And I won it flipping a half-ounce jig, 30-pound big game. Half-ounce black jig with a black and blue pork frog on there and 30-pound big game. So I wouldn't break the line setting the hook, 7.6 flipping stick. But think about that. On 30-pound mono, that half-ounce jig felt like a slug. You know what I mean? Like that was a big jig, big fishing, but like we're so much more advanced, you know what I mean, advanced off of that now. But the big deal is get something you're comfortable with. I learned to pitch and flip with a 6-foot rod.
Really?
Sure did. Taught myself to fit. I'm right-handed. I use both hands. I can pitch with either one. But I learned to do that with a 6-foot rod. Now that was just regular, you know, smaller baits, smaller jigs, what have you. Well then, like I 7/16. Like that was a big jig, and the 5/16 was a jig that I used all the time, like was a standard. And things have gotten, well, what we figured out on that deal is if they're biting it on the bottom, half-ounce gets there quicker.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so the deal is I have a tendency now to lean a little bigger on weight on a jig to make me more efficient, to get more bites. Rather than, yeah, they'll bite the 3/8, but if they'll bite the half, I can get it to them quicker. And that means I can cover more water and get more bites. But the main thing is just get something you're comfortable with. But you can, like I said, you can do this with a 7-foot rod, you know, fish that stuff, but you got to still have a big rod if you're going to carry that big weight. So really the rod, the action, the strength of the rod, the weight of the rod, it needs to match whatever you're putting on the end of it. Don't get a little bitty rod like that 6/8 skipping rod of Andy's. We wouldn't put a 3/4 ounce jig on there.
Right.
It'd be great with a 1/4 or 3/8 ounce skipping dots with it. But if we went to, even though it's not about the length, it's about the action. We went and put a 3/4 ounce jig on there, and this rod is not going to feel good to us.
Right.
It could still be 6/8. It would just have to be more rod, if that makes sense. Just a bigger 6/8 version of that. And if you look around, like I said, if you look in our line of rods, if we don't have a rod that suits you and suits every technique, you need to quit fishing.
Right.
You know what I mean? We got a reel, a rod for whoever likes what handle lengths. We got shorter ones, we got longer ones. We got something that makes you feel comfortable. We have it.
I typically gravitate to our 7.4 heavy. I know I sent you a bunch of those earlier this year. That's typically my favorite. Hackney's 7.6, in my opinion, it doesn't fish like a 7.6. It actually fishes a lot shorter, and I've heard you say that plenty of times before. And so if you're intimidated by a 7.6, definitely pick that rod up and check it out, because it doesn't fish as like a really big rod as some other ones. I picked up other 7.6 rods up before in the past, and they just felt like this mega long broomstick. So last question, how do you determine whether I'm going to pitch a jig or say a rage bug? How do you determine between those two?
Time of the year is typically has more to do with it. I always probably lean heavier on a jig before they spawn. Early on in the spawn, I'm a rodent guy. Middle of the spawn, I'm a rage bug guy. Soon as they quit spawning, I'm a jig guy again, like as far as picking. But there are niches where I'll catch spawning fish on a jig. Sometimes it can even be, a lot of times I'll flip plastics in practice because it's easier to get a bite. It is easier to get a bite on plastic. And I'm covering water, and I won't show those fish a jig till the tournament, and I may not show it to them long if I don't get bit. It's just, I fish so much or so long that I just kind of got to feel when I get a bite what it tells you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, but that's typically kind of the seasonal deal for me. We're flipping early, cold water, pre-spawn. I mean, you might could find one on the bed, but you know what I mean. Like, it's before the majority of them go to bed. Cover's right. I'm gonna, even Florida, I don't care where we are, I'm gonna lean on the jig. Once I know there are more of them spawning, but still maybe the water's a little colder. And if you're around giants, and when I say giants, like if you think there's a chance you might catch a 10-pounder flipping, our rodent is the best. I've caught weighed more 10-pounders in events than anything else.
That's a sneaky bait a lot of people don't talk about.
I mean, it like when it comes to that situation. So we were at the Classic this year, and Jordan Lee asked me this. He goes, "Why aren't you throwing a jig?" And there were a lot of them bedding, and I was like, I don't know. I just like the rodent, you know. And I didn't tell him. I was like, dude, when I get around in Texas around big ones, if I'm not flipping grass, I'm typically flipping a rodent. The state I've probably caught as many 10-pounders in as anywhere we've been, and the majority of them have all come on a rodent. Like, it catches giants. We went out to California Delta, I catch me a 10-pounder out there. You know, we went to the St. Johns River, I weighed me in a 10.8 and a 10.9 there on a, like that's the reason I use it.
That's the standard rodent.
Yeah, the standard rodent.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't talk about that baby.
All right.
We can't give it all up.
Yeah, we can't.
Yeah, there is a situation though when that baby is the deal.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well,
But we ain't gonna tell it all today.
can't get it all. Well, that's it for today's video. If you like this type of content, make sure you leave a comment down below. I'm JB3. Got Greg Hackney here. I got to get back to living the dream. I'll catch you later.